afternoon, everyone. It's Tom Sidney Bushnell, aka Numbers. Welcome to Sight Club. Well, in association with Sight Club, but we're going to do a show on the Tom Numbers Show, my second channel, which is top of your game. And I have the wonderful Tarot by Janine. Janine, you're my first lady guest on the show.
Wow.
So I'm very honored to have you on here. Following the likes of Michael Gambon, Matt Letitia, Gus Poirier, Sven-Goran Eriksson, a little piece from Jürgen Klinsmann. So Tarot by Janine. So Janine, I wanted to start off and I wanted to ask, what was life like for you growing up in Canada? What was it, in Calgary or Edmonton, or where did life begin for you?
Interesting. Okay. So my dad was a forest ranger.
Okay.
When I was young. And we had lots of kids. There were 7 children, and he was moved around at various different forestry stations. So if you look up what's it like to be a forest ranger in Alberta, Canada, you could probably Google that and find out. So we'd be placed in forestry homes. So they'd have been owned by the forestry. So it's like a division of the government. And he would be in charge of like 100 square miles. Back then it would have been called miles of forest. And so we were always out of town. So when I was really young, I grew up more in nature. And often there was one place in particular I remember was very mountainous. We were at the foot of what's called Castle Mountain. And we were at what's called Castle Ranger Station. Now, I think Castle Mountain has been made into a ski hill, but then it wasn't. So now it's a ski resort because it's quite an amazing spot. But we lived there, and it was there, I think around there. I think the family completed, like we had, by then, I think we would have had all the 7 kids. But anyway, then my dad and mom moved us, long story short, to like Edmonton. Okay, because they felt we needed better education, like all those kids. We were taking like a couple hours bus ride just to go to school, the older kids. So things were getting a little rough in the ranger stations. It was too hard to get the kids to school. So my dad took a job. I think he was a dispatcher, airline dispatcher for the government again. So helicopters and small aircraft. But I'm not exactly sure about those details, but I remember he was like an air traffic controller of some kind. He hated that job. It was really high stress. Then he got another kind of a desk job, and we ended up in Sherwood Park finally, which is one of the world's largest suburbs. It was literally called the world's largest suburb at one point. So you can imagine going from these really rural areas to the world's largest suburb. But the good news was I was really close to a graveyard. Now, that might sound weird to some people, but as a very young person, I loved graveyards, and that is a fact. And I still to this day could like lunching in a graveyard is a really great idea for me, especially if the graves are the old-fashioned variety. I just love the look of like graveyards with the old-fashioned gravestones. It's beautiful. It's one of the most peaceful places in the world, as far as I'm concerned, is a graveyard. So I'm completely comfortable with passed over energies. And that's when I started making friends with the other side. So I was attracted to playing in the graveyard. My mom probably didn't even know I was doing that. I would walk across, I remember at that time, the world's largest suburb wasn't really developed very much yet, but I would walk across what is now a highway, and I'd go play in this graveyard, and I would bring home souls. So I would make friends. So I remember reading the gravestones, especially I found a whole section where there was children. So this might sound weird to people, but it didn't seem weird to me. And I just intuitively was picking up on this energies of who was there. And I made friends with these children. So I'd read their names, and then I'd go home and they'd follow me home. And I remember we had this gate that would slam shut when the wind was blowing, and I would count how many times it would slam shut. And that was how many of those children came to play with me. And we'd play in the backyard together. Of course, my mom thought I was a bit odd. because I wasn't playing with actual kids.
Yeah.
I seemed to be playing, but you've watched kids, they play in this imagination world. I was in the imagination world a lot. Okay, but then speed up. I was pretty typical bringing up in if you could think suburb, big family in a small bungalow, it was kind of crowded, but at least we had each other. Rode my bike a lot. And I had a really big experience on my bike that kind of led me to, now I know what that experience was. About age 9, I was riding around this suburb, and it felt like the whole world stopped, and storm clouds moved in, and everybody went inside. So it was a summer day. I'm riding my bike, and all of a sudden everything turned strange, and everyone seemed to disappear off the streets, and I was alone, and a storm moved in really fast, but it didn't rain or anything. And it appeared to me what was like, some people would call it a burning bush. So I had one of those spiritual experiences that Christians might describe as the burning bush. And behind this burning bush, a voice talked to me, it seemed like. And it was like, I thought, God, right? So I got this direct message from a God or a universal energy that I would now call the universe. And I was told that I was going to be a spiritual leader. And I was like, wow. So here I'm being brought up Catholic. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm going to be a priest.
Right.
Interesting. Because I could, what else reference? I didn't have any other reference.
Yeah.
And my father and mother were very Catholic. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be a priest. And it felt like I was very much told about what I was going to be doing. So I ran home. Everything turned normal again after that experience. And I ran home and I told my Mom, I had this experience, I describe it. And I said, I'm going to be a priest, because they said I was going to be a spiritual leader.
Yeah.
And my mom said, no, you can't, you're a girl. So they must have meant nun.
Right.
You're going to be a nun. And she was quite excited. And I thought to myself, okay, nuns taught me in the schools, and they were the biggest creeps. Right. I'm just going to say it. Every one of them. There wasn't a nice one among them. They were nasty. And I'm like, there's no way. In my mind, I thought, okay, if I can't be a priest, then Catholicism's not for me. I remember thinking that at age 9, and I started moving away from the way my parents saw the faith. But I started developing spiritually on my own, and it was all in my own head. And I never told anybody, because I'm a bit very independent. And after that, I just didn't. I was like this to whatever my mom and dad said about spirituality. I'm like,
right, yeah.
You guys are nice. Yeah. You're not that bright about stuff. I just knew. And I intuitively went inside, and my connection to my higher self was like, that was a real experience. So what they're describing must be wrong. So I'm going with my own. So I just developed spiritually really on my own, not telling anybody, by the way.
Okay.
And then, right around in my 20s, somebody took me for my first card reading. I'd never been to a card reader. And this person was working in a pub. So you guys would describe it as a pub.
Yeah.
They were on what they call the quiet side of a big noisy pub, but there's a quiet side to it. Yeah. So this woman was working out of this pub, and I don't even remember her name, unfortunately, but older gal. She would have been in her, 70s or something. And she sat down, we had to pay her, I think it was $30. Yeah. $30. Yeah. And she gave me a reading, and that reading is still coming true today. Like she said, I would be a known reader. First of all, I'd get obsessed with tarot. I'd study it. I'd be a known reader. I'd have a huge clientele all over the world. Then I'd get on television. So she called it television, but I now see it was likely she meant YouTube. Yeah. And that's anyway,
YouTube used to be a TV, didn't it? Used to be a television. Right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And back then they didn't have YouTube. So card readers see things, and then they just tell a story, and then some version of it will come true. That's usually how it works. If they're any good, a version of their story will come true. They just use their own words to tell the story. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I thought she was nuts. And I said, no, I'm going to be a stewardess. I'm not going to be a tarot reader. I don't know what you're talking
A
about.
trolley dolly in the sky, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
can see
thought
that.
she was
Yeah.
crazy. And then
Yeah.
on my birthday that year, a friend of mine, probably the same friend that brought me for the tarot reading, bought me a deck of cards, my first deck, and put it in my hands, placed it in my hands. Yeah, so that was intense. And I literally fell into a meditation. And in the meditation, I became a cougar, which is interesting, a golden cougar. And now when I look it up, I'm part Indigenous Canadian, like we have that in our family background. My dad's a Métis, I'd say. You could call him a Métis. Anyway, this Indigenous, like when you look it up, how Indigenous people see cougar medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So the medicine of, so it was telling me I was like a cougar medicine person, is what how I read that. Is a spiritual leader, a female spiritual leader. If you look up cougar in Native medicine understanding.
Okay.
And being spirituality, that's what they mean by that. Anyway, so I was like, wow, okay, this is important. And the first thing that the cougar energy, I came out of that meditation, it was almost like I fainted at my birthday party, but I kind of came to a few minutes later, and everybody was standing around me, worried about me. And I just knew intuitively, first of all, I had to cut ties with this boyfriend I was with at the party. He was my initial feeling about it in the vision was he was in my way of my spiritual path. But what I got from that was my spiritual path comes first above everything. Mm-hmm. And I started looking for my spiritual teachers after that. And another friend took me to my first tarot card lesson and introduced me to a woman named Connie Leonard. Turns out now in retrospect, she was a survivor.
Okay. Yeah.
That interesting. So that connects me now to today, the spiritual situation we're in the world, fighting against people that have been abused by that, and the perpetrators of that sort of activity, right? We can't get into that too much here, but anyway, so she taught me tarot, and she was one of the best, to be honest. She was a spectacular reader.
And she's Connie Leonard, you say, is that her name?
Connie Leonard. Passed over, I'm sure, by now, but like, because the last time I talked to her, she was in her 90s, it was years ago, and she could barely hold the conversation. So I'm pretty sure she didn't have long for the world after that. So I'm assuming she's left the earth plane, but I don't know that for sure. Yeah. But I don't know, like, she wouldn't have been famous, but some people probably know of her. She was quite well known in her area, that's for sure. But back then there wasn't YouTube to get on and stuff like that. So but she was very well known probably by a lot of people, and ended up on Vancouver Island, I believe, was the last time I talked to her. She was living there. So some people might know of her, but she was really good, kind of socially, unfortunately, because of her background, like a difficult upraising, like her childhood was very difficult, obviously. Right. So she had some interesting sort of social issues, but so does everybody, right? Somehow, maybe not as
it's amazing we're all still alive because of the stuff we've been subjected to throughout time on the earth plane. So if you're still alive, you've got air in your lungs, then well done to everybody. So
anyway, then I went on to just follow my soul purpose, and nothing was coming in my way after that. Like, long story short, I ended up just listening only to my intuition and never looking back. I've never had a day job where I actually had a boss per se. Like, I did some bartending and waitressing while I was studying tarot. And I love doing that, by the way, but you're pretty independent. Like, I was mostly working for tips because the wages were about $3.40 an hour or something. We didn't even care if we got our paycheck or not. Like, and we often didn't, actually. In one place I worked, I never got a paycheck. We would just take advances from the till. Yeah. So I've never really been a documented worker, really, not really. But I've always been then I was a reader, and I just studied it for about 6 years, and astrology, before I felt confident. But when I was studying astrology, we had an ephemeris. That's how we read astrology charts. I would
ephemeris, what's that?
It's actually the thing that you would make a chart from. So it's charting it charts like what's in the skies above you according to the latitude and longitude. So you look up certain areas in the world according to the latitude, longitude, and you look up the time, and you can find out where the stars are going to be placed at that time. You can look ahead or behind.
Okay.
So you need to know how to read it. It's a language, but I naturally took to astrology. Like I really understood it as soon as I saw it's like a visual language. I just was like, okay, this makes sense. I had a natural intuitive knowing, and I used to take my ephemeris to make money, like to feed myself. I would my ephemeris to clubs, bars, but venues with musicians playing and whatever. And in the in-between time, I'd ask people if they wanted me to read their chart with this ephemeris, right?
Yeah.
So it was quite a feat. Like I'd take a ruler and look up their latitude, longitude of where they were born. And oh my goodness. Yeah. And I would tell them stuff about themselves.
Wow. Do you still have this ephemeris that you used to use?
It's all ripped up. So it's been so tattered.
Tattered, yeah. Okay. It's like a treasure match of the future.
Yeah, but actually, you can order ephemerises.
Okay.
Mine was a really fat one. I haven't seen those around for a long time. It was like a 100-year or something ephemeris. You could look up going backwards or forwards 100 years. But after a certain time, now they make just little ones year by year, and you can also look up online.
Okay.
An ephemeris. People that study astrology, they know what I'm talking about. But nowadays, everything's online, so you don't actually need an ephemeris.
Yeah.
But it is pretty cool if you can actually read from an ephemeris. It's pretty cool.
So when you were doing this at the bars and clubs and asking people to have the ephemeris reading, were you also doing tarot at the same time, or you developed tarot just a little later or a bit before? Or
I wasn't confident enough to whip out the cards yet in those days. So the ephemeris, but astrology, I must have studied in other lifetimes because it was a natural. Like I don't take it past your basic birth chart. I don't really know past that. If I studied that, I could probably figure it all out pretty quick, but it's not, I got more obsessed with tarot later.
Okay.
But I was the whole time studying tarot, but I wasn't confident to bring the cards to those places and do cards. Later, I started doing that in coffee shops, and then I found places that would let me read there and build a clientele. Long story short, I ended up in the Haida Gwaii, what was used to known as the Queen Charlotte Islands.
Yeah,
renamed.
Yeah.
We
spoke about that.
And I studied native medicine. By then I had a daughter, and I studied with a Haida medicine man, Nonkithka. That was his name.
What
anyway,
was his name?
Nonkithka. That was his Haida.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't even remember what his English name would have been, or even if did he have one, because he was actually trained. He was taken at age 3 and hidden away so he wouldn't be sent to a residential school. He was hidden away on an island. There's a certain island where they train the medicine people, or they used to, but he was one of the last ones trained like that. So he was taken, and this is what he told me anyway. He told there was other students as well as myself, but he was taken and trained up by a medicine man, not like away from his parents. And he didn't even know English for quite a while. Okay. He only knew his Haida language, and was very magically trained. So this guy shape shifted. I watched him shape shift.
Really?
And he was super magical. Now, I just want to say though, people get confused. Like they think people trained in the magical arts are naturally spiritual or highly evolved. So I'd call him magical. I wouldn't say he was spiritual, like his idea wasn't spiritually evolve and help humans evolve in service to people. And he was magical and not necessarily always thinking about for the good of humans. And I'm not dissing him at all. I'm just saying, don't get confused with people magically trained equals spiritually evolved and nice.
Got you. Yeah.
He was really intense, and he knew about magic, and he knew about every shade of magic.
Right.
He was fascinating, but I did eventually step apart from him because I didn't agree with, he was telling me I had to stop doing tarot and become 100% into the native ways and become like a medicine woman. I would have been in line for that. But I was like, you know what? That sounds like Christianity telling me I have to step away from my spiritual connection with my soul is all about the tarot. So no, I'm not going to do that. It sounded too much like what Christianity wanted us to do. So I had to step away from him, but I do really respect what he taught me.
When you said he shapeshift, I'm thinking, I used to see things, there was a TV show called Manimal. It was a bit like Knight Rider and the A-Team. It wasn't as big a popular show, but this guy would change into a panther and he would change into an eagle. Is that the shapeshifter, or can you describe what the shapeshifter was? Because I don't know. I've heard the phrase. Yeah.
So he'd do ritual smudging. So he'd use smudge and various different herbs that he'd burn and drum. And he'd drum and drum and drum. And pretty soon his form would change. But this could go on for hours, by the way. And sometimes he could create time to stand still. And what you were looking at, first it was him, now you see a wolf, now you see a raven, like that. Really interesting. He could also change weather when he decided to. Yeah, it was fascinating. But he would go through hours of smudging and drumming. So he would
literally change from human man form into a wolf or a raven before your eyes.
Was the two I saw, but I bet he could have turned into anything he wanted. Yeah, he was quite fascinating. But it took time and focus, and he could only do it on certain times, it seems, but I don't know that for a fact. But we saw it a few times, the people that were studying with him.
Wow.
So he also intuited into being in the he would intuit for everybody who was gathered. So he would do this. He would turn into a seer, like so through chanting and drumming, and then he'd start telling you your future. So that's how he didn't use cards, but he used drumming and chanting, and then everybody sort of went into a trance almost like state, and time seemed to stand still. Like you could be doing it what felt like hours of this ritual, and then you'd come out of the spot we were doing the ritual, which is usually in a nature area.
Yeah.
We'd come out of that area and it would an hour would have passed, not hours and hours like it felt like. It was very magical. Anyway, he did this one time where he drummed into being my future son. So I had my daughter already. She would have been about 5. I had her at 31. So now I'm in my mid-30s. I'm studying with this guy, and he drummed into being my son. And my son walked in the room, who is now my son, came in about age 3, maybe, or 4. He looked at this. So this little boy came with a little bit of an afro, and dark-skinned boy came and wrapped himself around me and was very loving. And it was like a hologram of a person, but I could see what he looked like. And I'm like, who's this little boy that's hugging me?
Yeah.
And he says, oh, that's your son.
Huh.
In his trance sort of like voice, he said, oh, that's your son. And I said, I don't have a son. And he said, well, it's your son in the future. He's coming in the future. He's just saying hi to you. And I was like, okay. Well, I said, oh, do I adopt him? Because he looked like a child from a different culture to me. And he went, no, you birthed him. In the future, you'll birth him. And his father is a Black man. And I was like, okay. But I said, but I'm not seeing anybody right now. And he goes, it's in the future. You're going to be in your 40s. And I was like, why would I do that in my 40s? Why would I go and have a child in my 40s? I just thought that was crazy, right? So I put it behind me, but that stuck with me, that vision of this beautiful child wrapping himself around me. And my son came in a really magical way in my 40s. Like it's unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway.
Wow.
Crazy experiences like that.
How did it feel when you saw this guy change form? Like, did it kind of freak you out, or was it just something you were amazed by, spellbound? How did it feel? Because I'm, it's really curious to
Well,
physically see that,
yeah, don't forget that I hung out with spirit energy from a little girl, so nothing
Right,
was
yeah. So you
weird for
kind of
me.
used to it, yeah.
Kind of, or I just, and also when you were drumming and chanting for what seemed like hours, might not have been, because time doesn't exist in those rituals. Like it
Right.
doesn't work like normal, but it would feel like hours and hours of this ritual. Okay, and so you're in a trance. So all of these things happen and you just accept them. It's like your ego gets dropped in the drumming and ritual chanting, and your ego is the one that wouldn't believe that, and your ego is the part of you that doesn't see clearly and is manipulated, I think. So your higher self's present and is witnessing these things.
Does it feel do you feel like you're in some kind of dream like state, trance state, or is it just as real as you going and getting a glass of water from the faucet in the kitchen?
Kind of in the middle.
Okay.
Kind of in the middle, and when it's over, you're not sure it really happened. Like you're like, with that, like I remember coming out one time. We did this ritual, and it lasted for hours. I thought we were there for hours. It was very interesting in a nature setting in the Haida Gwaii, which is, by the way, one of the most magical places in the whole world that I've ever been. The place is magical. Anyway, so I came out of the bushes, right? And it was really, then my ego returned, and I was really concerned, like, oh my goodness, my daughter's been with a babysitter for hours. So of course it was a trusted person, but I was all worried, and I rushed to her, and it'd been an hour. Yeah, so it, like,
the time displacement completely changed.
Yeah, you wonder, okay, was that real? And by the way, we weren't on any kind of hallucinogenics or nothing like that was going on my part. That I, for sure, but fascinating.
It's interesting you talk about the whole thing of time stopping, because just before the show I looked at some numbers around yourself, and I've not done this before, but tarot reader comes to 125, comes to time travel, comes to John Kennedy, comes to dark to light. And you mentioned just in our conversation now, you said the word seer, and I'm familiar with the word seer, but SEER comes to 47, which comes to time. And you talked about time stopping, so that's really incredible. And I kind of get a sense of your experience as you're describing it to me. I'm kind of feeling a little bit of, maybe seeing a little bit of what it's like, but that's really cool. That's fascinating. Can I take you back a little bit more to when you were young, and you talked about the fascination with the graveyards and the gravestones? Like, it sounds to me like that was a regular occurrence for you. I mean, would you ever be able to see and talk to spirits? Did they look like holograms or anything like that, or was it more kind of just a feeling that you had, or did you anything? I'm kind of imagining like Star Wars when you see Yoda and Ben Kenobi and a spirit, and I'm just wondering if you got to see or feel the spirits in any way.
It was a feeling, and it was like a download. It was like, so what people later, when I described it, they said, okay, you were channeling. So you didn't technically, or I didn't. So it was more, I would hear their whole life story. So these children would tell me things about themselves. And I felt like they were my friends, but I didn't visually see them. That's why I waited for the wind to slam that gate, because I remember counting how many of them came with me. And then I download sort of little things about them. So that's how we'd play our games. Like they might tell me games they wanted to play, or things that things about themselves, or things they knew about themselves. So we'd start playing a game together, but usually I'd wait to hear how many came with me from there. So that's just a memory from my childhood. And it's vague, the memory, but I that's what I remember about it, but I don't remember seeing them visually. And visuals, even like after I stepped away from Nunkeithka, the medicine man, I continued to grow spiritually, and all of a sudden a spirit wolf would come. Wasn't him, but it was another wolf, and I would first hear a rustling as if a wolf, and right away I knew, okay, a wolf is coming down a hill. Okay, this is just a visual. So there's a wolf coming, and it sounded like a wolf coming calmly down a hill and the leaves, it would have been fall, the sound. So I would hear that sound, and my intuition would say, your wolf teacher is here. So in front of me would sit a large energy of a wolf, but I wouldn't see the wolf literally, but I knew what it looked like. So it was a very large gray and black wolf, and it continued my spiritual training. So the wolf would tell me things like, when you see this, this is what's going on for the person. Like, it would basically how to read people better. I was being trained spiritually.
Wow. That's really interesting. So when you say wolf, Janine, wolf is 56, which is light, which is also April, and we're in the month of April. And then you said the wolf comes to 89. That comes to your last name, Morigeau, if I'm saying it correctly.
Morigeau, yeah.
Morigeau, that comes to 89, comes to the wolf. That's interesting that you could feel that. Yeah. What does Raven come to? I'm sure I've done this before. Raven, R-A-V-E-N, Raven 60. Okay. And Wolf 56, 116, Letitia. Interesting. Okay. And you said download. You said you talked about gravestones. Gravestones comes to 145, comes to numerology. Russell Brand, he's putting out good messages, good Q messages, 145. But you said download, and this is something I wanted to ask you. So there's always a magical how it all kind of comes around. So download is 88, which is Trump. Purple, and you're wearing purple today, which is 88. Download. And I had a question about this, or an observation. So when I got the gift of the numbers come to me, I had my first kind of feeling of it when my cousin died in 2015. I met Ivanka Trump, and I started to notice the numbers, but not in an alphabetical numeric way. It was just literally at the beginning of lockdown in 2020. I looked up Diana's funeral time, 9:08 in the morning, 9 + 8, 17. Oh, it's Q. I didn't know what Q was until 2 months later. I was listening to Trump every night, 88, download, 88. So I felt, for me, it was like a download. It kind of almost happened literally overnight. And I kind of learned I could, instead of counting it out on my fingers, which took me about 10 days to do, maybe 3 weeks at maximum, and then I could do it fluently, but it felt like a download. And it just kind of all came at once. And I just got, hundreds of thousands of all these reference points. Because I don't think I could have done it any other way, really. If it had taken me years and years and years to learn it, I'd be still kind of, Tom numbers in kindergarten. It wouldn't have really been very effective. But it literally came as a download. So that's so fascinating when you said you felt like it was a download in your early childhood, with the children and the spirit. Have you experienced other downloads, other gifts? So you've also got tarot, you've got the birth chart. Any other things any other pieces of I guess spiritual gifts, spiritual downloads that help you on your journey with your work now?
Well, when I go in public places, sometimes I get downloads about people maybe in front of me in line and etc. Okay. Now I'll definitely say I never tap them on the shoulder and tell them what I'm getting, because they didn't agree to that, and that would be overstepping boundary. I'm really big on boundaries.
Yeah.
Also, often when I'm in those kind of establishments, I'm off duty, so it's not like I'm agreeing to work with them and work on their stuff with them. You know what I mean? But I will get downloads about maybe issues they're having, and I work on sending heart energy and rising vibration in a room. I do like it just comes naturally. Like, and I think a lot of people out there do this if they're intuitive or loving of humans. I really love humans. So I spend a lot of time sort of doing these little rituals in my head.
Okay.
just to rise vibration in a room, send people healing energy. I got that sending ravens. The reason I say that is I was taught when I was in the medicine training to take your totem animal. So raven became really clearly one of my totems and one of the energy sort of medicines I work with. So I learned that, like, they taught me. So the ravens would come and wait.
Okay.
Like the vision of ravens would sit in trees. So some would come 3, 5, 6 numbers. They would come and sit in the tree and wait. And it was like they were waiting for something from me. So I learned to heap all that energy from my heart chakra onto their wings or onto their backs, and I send them. So when I say I'm sending ravens, if I know somebody's really hurting in particular, I'll imagine a tree in front of me and the ravens will just naturally come, however many the universe thinks they need. And I heap the loving energy on them, and it's how I send energy. But Reiki masters send it a different way, and it's just a healing technique.
Okay. Very cool. Sending ravens, yeah. Is it what's the spiritual significance? Well, it's your totem, but what's the kind of the spiritual significance of a raven? Like, does it have kind of a history to it, or why it's so prominent?
Yeah. Well, in the Haida understanding, they're healers, so healing, and they don't live in the physical world, so they live in the mystical world. So they bring you awareness of magic is around, healing is. To find their nests, and this is like just one of the ideas of why that might be.
So they come in and out of consciousness.
Yeah, they're like energy senders and receivers. So they shift healing energy around. You can send energy up with them. They're like messengers from the spirit world, and or from loving energy. Like, yeah.
Awesome. Ravens. I need to pay it. Here in Regent's Park, I thought I saw some ravens. I took some pictures a few weeks ago. It made me think of you. Are they the ones with the black beak? Are they bigger than black?
Yeah, they've got really big hook beak, as opposed to a more sharp, like little, like that's the crows.
Okay.
The crows ravens have a big kind of almost a hook nose and a longer.
As in your picture behind you, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So like from the side, they wouldn't just have a sharp beak. Like I love crows too, by the way. Crows are another big medicine of mine. Okay.
Black crow, actually. I did this before. It comes to 88 Trump, purple black crow. I remember, and Russell Brand's got a thing of a black crow on his motif. That's interesting. Wow. So that's why they're relatively rare, because they pop in and out of our reality, in and out of our dimension. Okay. Well, that's according to the way the Haida people, so the indigenous peoples known as the Haidas. Okay. That's my understanding of what I mean. As somebody who is a Haida might have a way better way of describing it, but that's what I gathered from what I was taught. Okay, awesome. Did you have any cards you wanted to pull, Janine? Either for you or for me or for the viewers, or? Let's pull for the viewers. Okay, let's do that. Because we're in really intense times and we need all the help we can get, right? Yeah, let's give them some good cards. Yeah, let's see. So this would be from the spirit world to the viewers watching a message. Okay. Wow. So that's interesting. A lot of your viewers might be waiting for a sign from either the White Hats or literally Trump himself. Okay.
So waiting and feeling like maybe even like they've been abandoned by that group, or so there's a lot of angst maybe around why that group isn't more out in the open, or why isn't Mr. T reseated or something like that, because
Okay.
they've been waiting a really long time. They've been patiently waiting for a sign, very literal. And I know there's been a lot of signs, but we need something pretty specific, I think. At this point, we're at that juncture where if we're going to keep working like this, universe, send us.
Yeah.
So it feels like that's how that happens, could be really surprising, but that's about to happen. So that's good to know, because we need that. We need the curtain to get lifted on this movie. We need things to show themselves. We need a real direct communication from either the Alliance / White Hats group. So many different, you could call them so many different things, and different people have different ideas about what those words mean. But I think generally people know what I'm talking about there. So the group on the back channels, the group that's connected to Q, the groups that, the 17th letter of the alphabet that connects to that kind of information drops. We need something real literal here, and we're ready. So it looks like we're going to get our wish. We're going to get our wish.
Excellent. Good.
Please.
You said you said white hats. White is 65, which is cougar. We spoke about cougar earlier for you. Hat is 29, which is Diana. Hats is 48, Tom. But white hats comes to 113, which comes to trumpet, comes to universe as well. So it's, white hats, universe.
Wow. Trumpet. Look at that guy. What is he playing? A trumpet.
There you go. I did.
Yeah, he's waking up the dead here.
Wow.
Okay.
There you go. Brilliant.
That's a trumpet card if there ever was one.
Yeah, it is. It's even got the English flag as well.
Yeah, it's crazy,
cross.
Right?
Yeah. And golden, it's a golden trumpet. Golden is Tesla.
Judgment. And we need to see some justice for what's been done to humanity. And we need to see these people come to judgment.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Judgment is 99, which is also Patriot, also Ascension. Justice is 87, which is truth. Truth, justice, and also Junior, as in JFK Junior. But that's really fascinating. There's it looks like you're gonna pull another set of cards.
So this feels like it's telling us it's long, slow, steady death to, that's my deep state dark cult card. It's been a long, slow, steady, like we're getting rid of these guys, but it's hard. It's hard work. And this is a painful, long, slow process to rid the world of thousands of years of being manipulated by this bunch, right? But this card here says, patience and perseverance is necessary. Universal timing, that's the temperance card. It's talking about the universe knows better than you do when's the right time. So we need to trust the universe's timing on this. It's not even human timing. Even the white hats, or what we call the Alliance or whatever, they're all also having to respect universal timing. The universe also is making moves here because there's a destiny happening. The destiny of it's time to not be controlled by. We don't need that lesson anymore. We don't need the dark hat lesson anymore. We've woken up, enough of us, I believe, and it's time to shift that, but the universe will make the final say on the timing. So we're going to need to trust that. And the more we all just trust the universe, and I'm not talking about put our trust in some humans or just do nothing. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying trust in your heart at least. Keep doing what you do, keep rising your vibration, keep never letting yourself be controlled in any way you can. Be independent and sovereign. Just do that every day, of course. and whatever it is you've been doing to keep the vibration high and people around you safe, and try to be loving. I'm not saying do nothing. I'm saying do all of those things, but also in your heart, trust and visualize a better world, because we're going to create it together.
Awesome. Yeah, fantastic. You said universal timing, Janine. That comes to 193. So universal is 121, which is second coming, which is golden jubilee, which is revelation, Gotham City for Batman and Robin. There's lots of codes on that. And then timing is actually 72, which is money, which is interesting. You know, it's all part of the golden jubilee. So golden jubilee money comes to universal timing 193, and 193 comes to one of the phrases I always like to say, which is follow the twos. 222, 1,000 years of peace. So that's amazing. And there's a set of numbers that I wanted to share with you, which is Tarot by Janine comes to 154, which comes to the second coming, which comes to the revelation, and you've certainly done plenty of those. And 154 comes to the golden jubilee, and it also comes to Queen of Hearts. Queen of Hearts, and Queen of Hearts was one of Diana's names that she was known by particularly by the people here in England, but all around the world. Wow. So Queen of Hearts, 154, Tarot by Janine. Yeah. Wow. Any? Can we have a look at that? Kind of where both you and I are very close in terms of a spiritual connection with Diana and the work that we both do. Can we have a look maybe on Diana, just kind of where she's at right now, what things are going on, and maybe she's got a message for us of hope and faith and confidence at this time of Easter.
Wow, she's also talking about the waiting we've been doing.
Okay.
There's not to forget, there's all kinds